All right. I am now recording. Evan is here as witness. I will be showing my slips, and this is for lowest score video for some random week in 2019. But anyways, I will show the slips. But first, I wanted to share a story that I came across online last week, and the slips will come. So Sean and Ebony Worley's nightmare began with music and a police officer found too loud for his liking. So it was August 2016, and the Worsleys were on their way east, heading from a visit with Ebony's folks in Mississippi to surprise Sean's family in North Carolina. Sean's grandmother had, excuse me, had been displaced by a hurricane, and he was hoping to help rebuild her house. The couple had some venison in the trunk uh, as a gift from Ebony's dad, who was a hunter, and they planned to share it with their family. So Sean is now 33. He is a disabled veteran with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder from his deployment in Iraq. He uses medical marijuana to calm his nightmares and soothe his back pain. His medical marijuana was in the back seat. He got the prescription in Arizona, where medical marijuana has been legal since 2011. Sean was walking into the gas station when Officer Carl Abramo of the Gardo, Alabama Police Department approached the car. He told the Worsleys that their music was too loud, and he asked to search the vehicle. The Worsley assented. Sean's marijuana was legally prescribed. They thought they had nothing to hide. They were wrong. Now Sean is sentenced to 5 years in Alabama's violent, drug-filled, corrupt prison system because of it. On August 15, 2016, at 11:08 p.m., Officer Carl Brano was stationed across from the Jet Pep on Highway 82, a major east-west thoroughfare that runs from Mexico to Georgia. According to a arrest report filed 5 days after the incident, he heard loud music coming from a vehicle and observed, quote, a black male got out of his passenger side vehicle. They were pulled up at a pump, and the black male playing air guitar, dancing and shaking his head. He was laughing and joking around and looking at the driver while doing all of this. The couple was Sean and Ebony Worsley, who had stopped a few miles from Pickens County border to refuel the car. Abrano told them that their music was so loud that it violated the town's noise ordinance, so they turned it down. According to the arrest report, he smelled marijuana and asked the couple about it. Sean had told him that he was a disabled veteran and tried to give him a medical marijuana card. Now, I explained to him that Alabama did not have medical marijuana. I then placed the suspect in cuffs. Abrano called for the backup and 3 more officers arrived. Abani explained that they were unaware that the medical marijuana was prohibited in Alabama. According to the arrest report, she told Abramo that the marijuana was in the back seat. Abrano searched the car. He found the marijuana in the rolling papers and the pipe that Sean used to smoke, along with a 6-pack of beer, a bottle of vodka, and pain pills that Ebony was prescribed for. He arrested them for all of it. Pickens is one of Alabama's 23 partially dry counties, so it technically is illegal to possess most alcohol there, though in practice, the rule is only enforced against violators who are profiting off its sale. He arrested him for that and for violating the noise ordinance and for illegal possession of marijuana and paraphernalia. Emily's pills weren't in the original bottle, which Abramo claimed constituted a felony. He put the handcuffs on her himself. In 2016, the year the Worsleys were arrested, black people were more than 4 times as likely as white people to be arrested for marijuana in Alabama. The Worsleys spent 6 days in jail. Their lives would never be the same. Marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance that the federal government views as illegal in all instances. Alabama used much of the same line, except for the extremely narrow exceptions involving CBD. Possessions of any amount can be a felony. First-time possession is charged as a misdemeanor if the arresting officer thinks it was for personal use. All subsequent instances of possession are felonies. If the arresting officer believes the marijuana is for, quote, other than personal use, then possession of any amount can be charged as a felony, even if it's an individual's first time being arrested for possession. That's what happened to the Worleys. Even though Sean's marijuana was legally obtained via prescription and packaged in a prescription bottle, Abrano booked him for possession for other than personal use, a Class C felony. Abani received the same charge, though it was later dropped. Now, things would have gone differently if the Worsleys had been traveling through most other states. Recreational use of marijuana is legal in 14 states, medical medicinal marijuana legal in 33. is commonly used by veterans and others to manage symptoms of a wide range of ailments, including PTSD and pain. Sean suffered from both as a result of his military service, for which he was rewarded a Purple Heart. Actually, in fact, when Sean was 28, the VA determined that he was totally and permanently disabled due solely from his service-connected disabilities. According to the 2015 benefit summary, later included in his Veterans Health Administration records, he suffered from traumatic brain injury that seriously impaired his short-term memory, as well as PTSD, depression, nightmares, back and shoulder pain. In 2015, Sean's impulsivity, cognitive disabilities, sleep disturbances, and depression were so debilitating that the VHA determined he required a caregiver. Ebony, then 30, took on that role. Sean's dependence level was high, requiring, quote, maximum assistance with planning and organizing, safety risks, sleep regulation, and recent memory, and total assistance with self-regulation. He responded poorly to the various antidepressants, antipsychotics, and pain medications prescribed to his doctors. At the time, that meant Ebony couldn't work, leaving the couple dependent on Sean's check from the VA. When he could, he supplemented that with part-time work as a roofer and gigs as a recording engineer. Ebony went with him to doctor's appointments. She would help him keep track of his schoolwork when he thought a business degree to transform his freelance work as a recording engineer into a business. The VA does not prescribe or fill prescriptions for medical marijuana, nor may VA clinicians recommend its use. However, in light of marijuana's efficacy in treating ailments common among veterans such as pain and PTSD, the VA is tolerant of veterans who are legally prescribed marijuana. In its official policy document regarding medical marijuana, the VA encourages clinicians and pharmacists to, quote, discuss marijuana use with any veterans requesting information about marijuana. A social worker in the VA in Arizona, where Sean received care, said medical marijuana is used among her clients and that she's seen how helpful it can be for people suffering from PTSD. Altogether, Sean spent 5 years in the military. His deployment to Iraq spanned 14 months, and he was honorably discharged September 22nd, 2008. Even after his injuries, he served in the Army Reserve until late 2010. Neither his service nor his Purple Heart nor his prescription mattered in Pickens County, Alabama. After 6 days in jail, the Worsleys were released on bond. It wasn't cheap. On top of fees to the bail bondsman, they had to pay $400 to get their car out of impound. The meat in the trunk had gone bad after 6 days locked in the car in Alabama's brutal summer heat, so the car needed to be professionally cleaned. But at least they were free. Now that freedom was short-lived. For a state so eager to honor veterans, Alabama's judicial system produces some confounding results. The system's determination to punish Sean set off a spiral of job loss, homelessness, additional criminal charges, and eventually incarceration in the county's most violent prison system. For all the substances that's legal in the states where half America's lives. But first, Sean and Ebony drove back to Arizona. They found the charges made it difficult for them to maintain housing and stability, so they moved to Nevada, where they acquired a home and lived peacefully while their case progressed. Almost a year later, the bondsman called. He told the Worsleys that the judge was revoking bonds in all the cases he managed. He said they had to rush back or he would lose the money he had put up for their bond, and they would be charged with failing to appear in court. They had felt that the bondsman had been kind to them when they were in Pickens County, so they borrowed money to make the trip and hit the road. They were due in court the next day. So when they got to court, the Worsleys were taken to separate rooms, and Bonnie was horrified. She explained that Sean was disabled with serious cognitive issues, that he had PTSD, that he needed a guardian to help him understand the process and ensure that he made informed decisions. If a legal guardian couldn't be appointed, she offered to be served as his advocate in court as she served as his caregiver at home. Quote, they said no, and they literally locked me in a room separate from him. And his conversation with me is that they told him that if he didn't sign the plea agreement, that we would have to stay incarcerated until December, and that they would charge me with the same charges they charged him, Ebony said. He said because of that, he just signed it. Sean's plea agreement included 60 months of probation, plus drug treatment and thousands of dollars in fines, fees, and court costs. Because the Worsleys lived in Arizona at the time of their arrest, his probation was transferred to Arizona instead of Nevada, which is where they currently lived. Transferring it would mean another lengthy delay and more jail time while the paperwork was sorted out, they were told. Sean could not bear to stay. The Worsleys got a 2-week pass from the probation officer in Alabama, and they drove home, broke their lease, and packed their things. When they arrived in Arizona, the only housing they could find on short notice was a costly month-to-month rental. Their funds were depleted, but at least they had a place to stay. The Worsleys were ready to start building their lives, but when they checked in with the Arizona probation officer, she told them their month-to-month rental did not constitute a permanent address. She would not approve it for purposes of supervision and told them to contact probation in Alabama. They did, and the Alabama probation officer told them that they would have to return to Pickens County to sign paperwork to redo the transfer. They didn't have the money to do that, so they asked their Alabama lawyer if they could be done by proxy and proceeded with attempting to comply with the other terms of Sean's probation. Among those was drug treatment. He had been an Alabama resident. Sean would have participated in mandatory programming through Alabama's court referral, one of several diversion programs operating across the state. The terms of probation required him to seek similar services where he lives. So in February 2018, Sean went to the VA to take an assessment for placement in drug treatment. The VA rejected him. A letter from the VA Mental Health and Integrated Specialty Services reads, in part, quote, Mr. Worsley reports smoking cannabis for medical purposes and has legal documentation to support his use and therefore does not meet the criteria for a substance use disorder or met need for substance abuse treatment. The Worsleys maintained contact with their Alabama lawyer and probation officer as best they could, but things were getting difficult. Ebony, a certified nursing assistant who works with traumatized children, had a job offer rescinded due to the felony charge in Alabama. She also lost her clearance to work with sensitive information to which she needed access to do her job. For a while, the Worsleys slept in their car or lived with the family. In January 2019, they again found themselves homeless. They requested assistance from a program that helps homeless veterans. Just as they completed the 6-month program, the VA notified Sean that his benefits would be stopped because Alabama had issued a fugitive warrant for his arrest, unknown to Sean, who had missed the February court date in Pickens County, and the Pickens County Supervision Program had terminated his supervision, citing, quote, failure to attend and failure to pay court order monies. The case was referred to the district attorney's office in March 2019. The Worsleys were in a terrible situation. Ebony, she needed heart surgery, and Sean had to stop taking on extra gigs so he could help her recover. Rent was expensive, anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month, and they had a car loan as well. To cover costs, the couple took out a title loan, but they were unable to keep up with it. They lost Ebony's truck. They lost their home and again had to move into a temporary rental, paying $400 a week to live in a suburb about an hour from the hospital where Ebony still had frequent appointments. Sean was able to get his check started up again in around August 2019, but the financial hole they were put in was so deep that he didn't have the $250 to renew his medical marijuana card. It expired. In early 2020, Sean was pulled over on his way to Ebony's sister's home where he was going to help with a minor repair. He had some marijuana with him. The officers pulled him over, noticed he was terrified. They asked him why. According to Ebony, he told them everything about his PTSD, his traumatic brain injury, the expired card, the outstanding warrant from Alabama. The officers told him not to worry. Alabama would never extradite him over a little marijuana. It would be okay. But then when they called to make sure, Alabama said it wanted to bring Sean back to Pickens County. When the Arizona police told him, he ran. He fell. He was taken to jail, and eventually he transported to Pickens County at a cost to the state of Alabama of $4,345. The state moved to make Sean pay that money himself on top of the $3,833.40 that he already owned in fines, fees, and court costs. Quote, I feel like I'm being thrown away by a country I went and served for. Sean had been in the Pickens County jail since early 2020. On April 28th, the judge revoked his probation and sentenced him to 60 months in custody of the Alabama Department of Corrections. Over the last 3 years, there have been robust efforts in the Alabama legislature to modify the state's marijuana law. A bill legalizing medical marijuana under controlled conditions passed the full Senate this year before the session ended due to COVID-19. A bill reclassifying possession of 2 ounces or less as a civil offense passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2019. The reforms that could have created a vastly different outcome for Sean Worsley were on the horizon. At the same time, lawmakers who support changes to the law undermine their urgency by insisting that marijuana possession does not land people in prison. Senator Cam Ward, chair of the Secretary Judicial Committee, told a reporter in 2019, quote, "The only people in state prisons on possessions of any kind of marijuana are those trafficking the truckloads of it." Then, them and disabled black veterans playing air guitar at the wrong time. Well, all of them and disabled black veterans playing air guitar at the wrong time while passing through Alabama. Alabama's entire prison system for men was found by the U.S. Department of Justice to be in violation of the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. U.S. District Attorney has deemed its mental health services, quote, horrendously inadequate. It's almost certain Sean's mental health will decline further in prison. The Alabama Department of Corrections, which has the highest homicide rate in the country, cannot keep him safe. He'll leave behind 2 children from a prior relationship, ages 12 and 14, who, according to Ebony, have already struggled with his absence. He'll leave Ebony behind, who is due to have another major surgery without her husband and best friend by her side. In a letter to the Alabama Appleseed from Pickens County Jail, Sean expressed despair at being away from his children and from Ebony. He feels humiliated at having to call them from jail, crushed that he is, as he put it, quote, letting them down, over rest stemming from efforts he was making to keep himself healthy. Quote, "I feel like I'm being thrown away by a country I want and served for," he wrote. Quote, "I feel like I lost parts of me in Iraq, parts of my spirit and soul that I can never get back." Ellis English, Sean's friend and former supervisor, another black veteran who has himself pulled over more and more times than he can count, feels the same way. Quote, "You go over there, you come home messed up, then you still get targeted by police," English said. "That's what hurts the most."